You want to fight racism? You want to gain power? You want to eradicate poverty in your neighborhood, in your communities? You want the power, don't you? Well, in order to get the power, we're going to have to change our mindsets. We must start businesses in our communities. Instead of continuing to promote going to college to go and work for companies that are not black owned, how about we teach, go to college to get a job, all the while learn about the industry so you can use that awareness and start your own firm. Start your own firm so that you can be the solution to unemployment for your people and stop begging others to fix the ills in your community. Slavery officially ended in 1865, and we still waiting on reparations. Know this. The U.S. government has for years poured millions into the coffers of the so-called black organizations to do work in the black community, and it has never made it to the communities. So you have to figure out where that money is going, or you have to question where that money is going. As black people, we have this thought process that others will fight for us. We're going to have to start fighting individually and seek out other individuals who are fighting individually and come together as a collective unit to fight for the whole. We have to work in interest for taking care of self without being selfish. We must take care of our immediate needs and prepare the future for our kids, while at the same time we're working to empower our people. Ask yourself this question. What do you own individually? What are you leaving to your offspring? Can you leave your job to your offspring? We're going to have to learn how to control things. We're going to have to learn how to own things. We have gotten so entrenched in a go to school and get a good education mindset that we encourage our kids to go into massive debt to get the education. What we haven't realized is the same companies that pay or employ us are the same ones who finance the universities. Then they pay us just enough to give us the illusion of doing good. Did you know we had 1,500 billionaires worldwide and only 9 of them are black? And these include the ones in Africa. These major companies pay colleges to basically give you enough so you would not want to compete with them on a business or corporate level. They're paying the colleges to teach you how to work for them and not to compete with them. The entire time we're being taught to be subservient to the system. We look at our high-paid black athletes and entertainers. They are high-paid. However, have you ever heard or do you ever hear about them doing anything in the communities that they came from? Now there's a few out there. Shaquille O'Neal comes to mind. Magic Johnson has done some things for the black community. But as a whole and as a collective, have you heard a whole lot of them doing anything? Do you hear about any of them starting businesses? And once again, nothing is ever 100% because you do have some of them that have started businesses. But as a whole is what I'm talking about. What we see is a great majority of them spending their money recklessly. And it's their money. They can spend it how they want to. But what about having a vision? What if these high-paid athletes and entertainers came together with a parent sound financial planner and play some of their monies together to outright own a professional franchise to start? What if the movie and filmmakers put their collective monies together and started a total production film company? I won't mention any names, but did you know that a black man is the highest grossing movie star of all time? When he got his first role, he was actually in a crack rehab center. And in light of him making all this money, all he does is promote hate toward other races, even though he has largely made it with the support of white America. He tells us how hard it is, how racist they are. Isn't that amazing? This guy is still active today, and he has earned well over $1 billion in acting roles because he said he's never turned down a role that he's been offered. So if he's been offered so many roles that he's earned $1 billion, somebody other than us is helping him. Recently Dr. Dre just sold Beats. What could he leave for his kids if he would have got some sound financial advice about retaining at least 51% ownership? Johnson sold BET to Viacom. We have to learn how to get assets and keep them. We need income producing assets, not a huge payoff. Before the deal was even sealed, Dr. Dre had already made an offer of $50 million on Tom Brady's house. I'm not saying we shouldn't have things. We should have things. But the things shouldn't have us. But I'm just pointing out how a thought process is when it comes to money. Less than 5 years after their last playing day, a great deal of professional athletes have less than $1 million in net worth. Now, these guys earn more than that in a season, and a great majority of them. What if they would have invested and started businesses or a business while they were playing, so they still had millions in income coming in from their job as a player, so if the business was suffering, they could still live well? It would provide a lower tax structure because you own a business. It would allow someone else to run it while you were playing. It would employ people in your communities. It would give an asset that could be passed on to their kids. When you look across the sports spectrum, those players in the NHL and Major League Baseball are starting businesses while they're still playing. What's the equalizer that these athletes have in common? All of them are non-black. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and talk about something that's just my opinion, because I'm going to say, I believe we should be able to love anyone we want to. But let me point something out to you. Now, as I mentioned, this is my opinion, and my opinion only. All professional sports franchise owners are white. Now look at what happens in the NFL and the NBA. These guys get drafted, and they are inundated with a buffet line of white women to choose from. The white owners pay these guys all of this money, and then they tell their white homeboys to send their daughters out there to get their money back. Now remember, that's just my opinion. But think about it. Baseball and hockey don't have this problem for the most part because most of those players are non-black. And then the white fathers and mothers teach their daughters to go to school to find a rich husband, regardless of color, as a way of covering their real motives. Again, my opinion. The black community loses again. Look at our black male entertainers. How many times have the sisters with the last name starting with K and another young lady whose initials are AR been passed around in the black entertainment circles? And then after being passed around, our black brothers turn around and marry them. We have a cycle in madness in our community. I mean, it's sickening. We must stop going to black politicians and demanding that they work through legislation to change the rules of the game. We're going to have to learn how to play the game with the rules that are in place. If we have no economic power, our cries fall on deaf ears. Politicians listen to the people who are giving them money. Sad to say, but it is. They don't work in the interest of what is best for the community that they're supposed to represent. They work on the self-interest of themselves. We will not replace these very same politicians because they keep paying us lip service about what they're going to do for us. Have you ever noticed they're always going to do something for you? Janet Jackson has a song titled, "What Have You Done For Me Lately?" In the other cultures, they get rid of politicians who are not doing what they promised. Once you have economic power, you have a real voice. Until then, you are a clanging cymbal. You're only making a lot of noise. They don't hear you. Get some economics, and your school board listens more attentively. Your local city council seems to hear better. When you operate from a position of weakness, it's real hard to influence anything. Look at the state of your community. Does it look like one that has any economic power? Foreigners come into our communities and they start businesses, and we patronize them daily. At the end of the day, they remove all of that money from the community that they supposedly serve and take it to the other side of town that they live in. When was the last time a foreign-owned company in your neighborhood contributed anything to a scholarship fund or when a disaster struck your area, they gave some resources to help out the people that live in the community. But they sure know how to take from it, don't they? And we willingly give it to them. You know, not to let them off the hook, when was the last time a black-owned company in your neighborhood did the same thing? Also, you know, I'd like to mention, when was the last time a black church did anything of the sort? You know, I pay attention to things. You know, our local congressman represents a wide area. I've never seen him visit an inner city school or predominantly black school in his district. However, I have seen him in photo ops with students of some of the private schools in his district. You know why, don't you? Then we look at it and say he is doing well and reaching out to the community. The only problem is he's not reaching out to your community. You will hear a lot of blacks talk about building the continent of Africa. I got some sad news for you. We as black people have nowhere to go. So we might as well make our best life here in America. You know, America's not perfect, but it's all we have. You know, how about we build our communities through business ownership first? You know, it's great to want to rebuild Africa, but you know, how about we build our house first and then our community second? Then we can branch out. You know, let's be honest. You're probably not very excited to get to the office in the morning. You don't feel much appreciated while you're there. You find it difficult to get your most important work accomplished, and you don't believe that what you're doing makes much of a difference anyway. By the time you get home, you're pretty much running on empty, and yet you still answer emails until you fall asleep. You know, we're working at places that are not allowing us to find purpose and meaning in our life. But you know, let's get back to the root issues. You know, our mindset has to change. We need to stop placing value on things that are not assets. You know, we buy vehicles and put rims on them so we can look rich. Then we put ourselves in a position for some youngster to want to take it from us. You know, am I saying having rims on a vehicle is wrong? Not at all. You know, what I'm saying is that we put rims on vehicles and we still have car notes. We buy tennis shoes that others kill for. Normally our own people. You know, we spend anywhere from $40 to $60 on video games that have us hooked like crack. You know, I like to play a game every now and then. But when I see a man in Best Buy in his 60s talking about he hopes his wife buys him the newest PlayStation for Christmas, we got a problem with our mindset. If we have our old heads thinking like this, our kids don't stand a chance. You know, what does your drinking habit even occasionally cost you? What does your cigarette habit cost you? You know, for ladies, what does it cost for you to buy artificial hair from foreigners? If you're going to buy the hair anyway, why not figure out how to sell it yourself? If you're going to the nail shop anyway, figure out how to own one. You know, our women give all of this money to foreign-owned companies for the treatment of their hair and wonder why they have hair issues such as falling out. You know, these video game systems cost anywhere from $200 to $500. You know, the games cost what I just mentioned. What would our family life and economics be like if we took that very same money and got involved in network marketing opportunity and actually worked it? What would our economic situation be like if we spent those dollars and attended a seminar on investing or real estate or business ownership? What if we took those dollars and bought books on changing our mindset from employee thinking to wealth mentality? What if we took that money and invested in any program that would allow us to earn an income through some form of business ownership? What if you took those dollars and studied something like E-Trade and invested those dollars over there? What if you put those monthly gaming dollars into a college-funded program like the 529 plan for your kids instead of hoping and praying they get a scholarship? You know, one of the things that's amazing to me is that parents beat it into their kids' heads about going to college, but then turn around and tell them they haven't put any money into a college account for them. They want their child to do in 4 years what they haven't done in 18. And what I mean by that is the child gets looked at by colleges in high school, not before, unless they're an exceptional basketball player with super height or something. But the child cannot work a job until he or she turns 16. You know, at that age, they have no marketable skills, so they're going to make minimum wage. At that age also, the law says they can only legally work so many hours a week because they're in school. So they basically have 2 years of work at minimum wage to save money for college in case they don't get a scholarship, which they would have started working towards in the 9th grade. Now, you as a parent always talk about college. You talked about your future kids going to college to have it better than you. But you did nothing financially before you started to have kids to prepare for their future. You did nothing the entire 17 or 18 years that they went through school to help them start off so they wouldn't have to go into debt to go to something you said and promoted that was good for them. You still enjoy your life pleasures while they are struggling to get through school. They graduate many thousands of dollars in debt because they went to do something that you told them was good for them. They start off working, if they can find a job in that field, already behind the financial 8 ball. Now, they can't start off preparing for their future generations because of the advice that you gave them about how great college was, but you did nothing to help them. Now they can't help themselves or their kids. Stop waiting and expecting somebody else to do for you and your family what you should be doing. Hoping for a scholarship is placing responsibilities somewhere else. Hoping for raises and promotions is placing responsibilities somewhere else. What would it be like? What would your life be like if you started a business and made it profitable and you can employ your kids upon graduation? How much easier would it be for your kids to focus on studies when they're not having to worry about the next tuition installment that's due? You know, we should be living our lives so that our kids start off better than where we started from. Don't get me wrong. I believe education is great. I don't want anyone to mistake what I'm saying is anti-education. I personally take online classes periodically. What is more important though? Is having economic power or a name with a whole bunch of initials attached to it more important? You know, Dr. So-and-so, Reverend so-and-so. You know, what we don't realize is some preachers only became preachers because they didn't finish school and they wanted a title associated with their name so they could feel important. We look at email signatures and everybody has their title on it so you know they're important. Titles don't pay your bills. Money does. You know, if we pay attention, we're being slowly eradicated from society. You know, we stopped opening business with civil rights and we went into corporate America heavily. We really started to pursue what was termed good jobs. Now, as we look across the job spectrum, we're the ones that are being heavily unemployed. I read the other day in Chicago alone that over 92% of young black males are unemployed. You know, if amnesty passes in this country, you're going to have anywhere from 10 to 15 new people that are going to come to this country and compete for the jobs that we're already having trouble getting. It is amazing that some of the very same people who are supposed champions for having minimum wage increase are the very same ones who want amnesty. The same ones talking about getting the economy moving are the very same ones that are doing what they can to further enslave the people. The best thing we can do is to figure out how we as black people can get on top of this economics game so we don't continue to get left behind. Our ancestors were actually better off right after slavery than we are right now. We complain of racism, we complain of discrimination, while they actually openly lived and experienced it. You know, what we call racism is just words. They endured real racism. You know, in spite of all the things they dealt with back then, they still opened and operated businesses successfully. Some folks during that time, the so-called black elitists, said that prestige was working for someone who owned a large company and our black businesses were not able to compete at those levels. You know, a lot of us have heard about Black Wall Street in Tulsa. There was also Negro Wall Street in Durham, North Carolina, which preceded the one in Tulsa. We have heard that the one in Tulsa was burned down. What we didn't hear was that they rebuilt Tulsa, but blacks refused to continue to support the businesses. In Tulsa, blacks actually owned their own schools. And when a student went to school on Black Wall Street, they had to wear a suit and tie because of what the parents were teaching them at home. Let me ask a question. What would it do for our community today if our young men went to school dressed like that instead of the pants hanging down and earrings in their ears? All of the kids in the family helped in the business. The average size of the family was 5 kids. Some actually had 10, and each one of those kids worked in the business. You know, there were 600 businesses on Black Wall Street. Let me ask a question. If Tulsa supposedly suffered at the hands of what jealous whites did, what happened to the rest of the black businesses and the cultures around the country that suffered the same fate economically as what happened in Tulsa? There were no fires to destroy their business. So what happened? I'm going to tell you what happened. The closer we got to civil rights legislation, the further we got away from business ownership. And I know some of you not going to like that, but it is what it is. You study it yourself. I'm not going to explain it to you. A piece of paper now said we were equal to other folks. A piece of paper said we could now go and give our dollars to people who didn't want to do business with us beforehand. We willingly gave our dollars to people who hated us. Guess what suffered because of our lack of self-worth and respect? Our businesses, our families, and our communities suffered, and they have never recovered. And then the government came in after that and offered us affirmative action to further entrench us into the corporate job system. You know, we got excited about those folks who went to bat for us to get 10% of government contracts. You know, if we were fighting, why didn't we fight for more of the pie? You know, affirmative action was put in place, as they told us, so that blacks would not be discriminated against, but it allowed white males to retain 90% of government contracts. It was supposedly for blacks, but the wording has changed and now it's minority. In a play that I am sure was in place all along, minority now includes everybody in the U.S. except the white male. So now you get to compete with everybody in the USA for 10%, but the white male for the small piece of pie that they gave you. And now guess what? The white male's wife is a female. So she qualifies as a minority. So what the white male has done in some cases has placed the business in his wife's name. And it's just in her name only because he's still running the company. And now he can compete to get back the 10% that he gave up. And it's all legitimate. Now, what history didn't tell you was that our black-owned businesses during these times had a large white customer base. We need to stop making excuses and start making choices that's going to impact and empower us. Our minds have been tampered with and we haven't realized it yet. The entire public school system is gearing us to work for others instead of self. We're ridiculed for getting an F in school, but life isn't that way. You will fail in everything that you set out to do. What if you decided to not get up the first time you try to walk on your own? School says failure is a bad thing. If we're going to learn, we have to learn from the things that don't work. Our society is now set up to protect you and your self-esteem at the expense of your dignity. School wants us all to fit into a mold. All of us have equal access, but we all don't have equal ability. You know, in this information and technology age, it is a decision that we make to remain in the same thought process. Our kids should be able to stand on our shoulders and see further than we could have imagined. If we keep teaching them the same flawed information that we were taught, they can only see the same things that we saw. We tell our kids we want them to do better than us, but we don't encourage them to learn outside of our own realm of thinking. If our kids come to us and talk about business, the very first thing we do is encourage them to go out and get a degree first, even though we don't have any money to put up for them to go to school. If you as a parent allow them to stay home after high school graduation and work for 4 or 5 years with the understanding that they had to be saving and investing those money for their business, how could that impact your family and your community later? As the parent and person providing them a place to live, you should ask for monthly or quarterly statements to make sure they're doing the proper things with their money. Don't let them use it for any other purpose than the one stated. As a parent, you're already providing them with food and shelter, so why not let them continue to live there for a few more years? You know, some coaches actually make sure their kids don't start behind the financial 8 ball and give them a new car upon high school graduation. And some even give their kids houses. You know, we don't provide funds for our kids to go to school because we haven't prepared. Then when they're able to get a little money while they're in college, they end up buying a vehicle that is subject to break down at any moment. Then we justify our lack of preparation by saying tough times will make them stronger and better people. When we have ownership in our communities by us, we tend to take better care because it is normally family members or friends who own the business. And if it's not either one of those, at some point it becomes a friend. If a black person comes from another community and opens business. Especially if that person operates with high integrity and customer service. When this happens, we will see the crime rate decrease because we don't want bad elements destroying our community. We will all feel like we're part of the ownership. We will want things to remain nice in our communities. But it's going to take a mindset shift. What if we said go to school to get educated so you can start a business? You have a lot of folks that go to school and earn their business management degrees. What you are being taught is how to run somebody else's company. What if they had a degree plan for business ownership? What if they offered a degree plan for entrepreneurship? What if you rewired your kids' brains and taught them to go and get the accounting degree to learn the accounting industry, but always be thinking of owning their own accounting firm? What if we could educate our kids on becoming financial planners instead of financial advisors? How different would things be if we got the business management degree and we went into retail, which is what a lot of graduates in that field do, but the entire time they're learning how to own and operate their own retail company? If we approach work in this frame of mind, we're learning and seeing what works most effectively and what doesn't. We can then take the effective tools and apply to building our own business. What if you took notes at your place of employment and put yourself on a continuing education program on business ownership and put all of that effort into practice? Every community needs business if it's going to survive and thrive. When communities are filled with destruction, no other companies want to bring business there. If we don't break the cycle, nothing will ever improve for our families, our neighborhoods, and our communities. If we don't break the cycle, we will continue to be second-class citizens. In the black community, we have over $1 trillion that run through our collective hands each year. For a culture to have these type of resources flowing through it and not be better off economically, there is something definitely wrong with our thought process. I am sick and tired of hearing about the lasting effects of slavery. I am tired of hearing about racism. I already mentioned how our ancestors thrived and they were much closer to the institution of slavery than we are. You see, slavery and racism is always the fallback on why we aren't making it as a people. So now it's time to give up those crutches and face the truth. We don't want to start business because we don't want to. We don't want the responsibility that comes along with it. We don't want to give up some of the pleasures and entertainment that comes along with being an employee. What do I mean by that? I'm glad you asked. When we work a set schedule, we can schedule our activities around our work schedule because it is normally a set schedule. When we are business owners, there is no such thing as a set schedule. I'm not a morning person. I don't like doing work on Saturdays and Sundays. But guess what? When someone wants me to speak to their organization or student body in a morning time slot, I'm always there early. When someone wants me to speak on a Saturday or a Sunday, I'm always there unless the health issue or death in the family prevents it. I feel honored that someone wants me to come and share with their organization. Entertainment can wait. Hanging with friends can wait. Watching TV can wait. I tell you what, a woman has more respect for a man when he is continuing to strive for better than when he has accepted his lot and does nothing to improve anymore. Our kids have more respect when they see us continue to go after new goals. What if our kids were taught and trained in a business that we owned? That would be a whole lot better than the one day of the year that you're allowed to bring them to your job with you. The reason your kids don't like the work you do is because you come home and complain about it with them in hearing range. How about teaching them business ownership and what comes along with it by owning a business yourself, and at the same time teaching them values and principles and work ethic? How about teaching them there's no such thing as demeaning work as long as it's honest? I started cutting yards at age 10. I worked on a farm in East Texas at age 14 and 15. My dad started a lawn service and I worked with him through college. As a matter of fact, from time to time I still go and help him. I worked in retail for a number of years in various capacities. I traveled for a time for the company I worked for. I DJ'd parties for a number of years. I assembled furniture when I got off my full-time job and on weekend. Sometimes my DJing, full-time job, and furniture simply overlapped, where in a typical week I was always working. Cutting grass taught me how to properly do work right. Retail taught me how to deal with people from all backgrounds and ages as well as customer trends. Furniture assembly really taught me the value of following instructions. Working on the farm taught me discipline. There were no 15-minute breaks on the farm. I know some people get all bent out of sorts nowadays if the boss don't give them a 15-minute break, they coffee break. We can take all of our experiences and use them to our benefit in business for ourselves. We can employ all of these attributes into a business of our own. We have to change our mindset from one of being employed to one of employing others. We have to learn how to improve our skills on the job so that we can go and work on and improve our purpose. We need to have a vision so that our kids have something to improve on. Without vision, anybody can run our lives, and that's typically what's happening in our black culture. Everybody's running our lives except us. If you get around business owners, you will see your thought process change. When we don't want to improve self, we also don't want our closest associations to improve either. Oh, we don't mind them doing good, just not as good or better than us. Why do we listen to folks that tell us something doesn't work when these very same people have never tried anything to improve their lives? Why do we listen to people tell us something doesn't work when they have no experience in that industry? Why do we listen to folks who will not come to our aid when a financial crisis hits us? Why do we listen to folks who cannot pay our mortgage for us or point us in the right direction when we're struggling? Why do we keep listening to people who want us to remain just over broke? We are here to be an influence. We're not here to be liked. We become influenced when we do things that will outlive us. Yes, I know that when we have a business, we don't get matching contributions from an employer in a 401 or IRA. That's why we need financial planners. We don't necessarily get vacation time in the beginning. However, done properly, you can get a lot more time with your family this way. Where else can you get free labor? Did you know that if you have a business and then you employ your child under a certain age, you can pay them up to a certain amount each year that is tax-free to them and a tax deduction to you? You can pay them and they can buy their own school clothes and shoes. Now, talk to your accountant about that, but it does happen. You cannot do that with after-tax dollars. We need to create an environment in our communities where the community promotes our business for us. What would it do for your neighborhood if others came from other parts of the city to do business with you? We can offer the youth in the community jobs. We can teach them what it takes to run a business. We have to go into business thinking of a bigger picture than one establishment. When you offer youth in a community a job and the parents at home talking about business ownership, our youth have a connection to the place and they don't want others to come around vandalizing and robbing these places because we have explained to them the cost of doing business and the negative effects of those who do wrong. In the Asian community, the money changes hands 7 times before it ever leaves. It changes hands 5 times in the Jewish community. It changes 3 times in the white community. And it doesn't even change our hands in the black community at all. This is not something from a long time ago. This is what's happening today. The ironic thing is when things were supposedly so bad for us in a place like Tulsa's Black Wall Street, money changed hands in the community between 36 and 100 times before it ever left the community. As I talked about how much money moves through our collective community, let me paint a picture for you. We go to work and earn our paycheck. We come home and pay our bills. Once we do that, we go outside of our neighborhood to shop or eat dinner, therefore empowering a community that isn't ours. People walk around talking about my job like they own the job. If we also look at the decline of black business when it went into decline overdrive, we will also notice that this is the exact same time that our political base shifted. We jumped to ship to a party that is anti-business from one that was actually pro-business. We place so much of our energy and emphasis on politics at the expense of strengthening our business community. We actually think it was a Democratic Party that championed for civil rights because LBJ signed the legislation, although it was the Dwight Eisenhower that originally proposed it, and LBJ and JFK were against it when Eisenhower was president. And even with the one that LBJ signed, it actually took away a lot of the provisions that the Dwight Eisenhower had put in place. When, and only when, we have economic power can we actually influence politics. It is sad that we are at this point where money controls our election, but it is what it is. Politicians have deaf ears because we are powerless as a people. When you build thriving businesses and help the community understand the policies that your elected officials fight for are the ones that actually hurt business in your community, we understand better. When you have economics, your politicians will all of a sudden get the wax out of their ears. When they understand that they will be voted out, they start to hear much better. You can't do that when the community is broke as a whole. The people who own the business in your communities don't vote in your communities. When a black-owned business thrives and makes money, the whole community benefits from it. You know, go and read the book Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. He's going to help you understand money. You know, if we want to own our own life, we must have the financial freedom to make our own decisions. You know, in an article I read by Elizabeth Rice, she's since passed away, she talked about black men not being able to offer any economic alternatives because they have created nothing of value themselves. She talked about how many black men ran to the church to create their own personal cathedrals of commerce. You see, what she was saying is that there is no competition in the pulpit. So I'm going to talk about that briefly as well. You know, a lot of these preachers do the very same things that foreign business owners do. They take the money from your community into their own, which is far away from the church. They're not putting anything back into the community themselves. You know, Booker T. Washington also said that we had too many preachers back then and not enough men who owned business. I wonder what he'd say if he were here today. He was friends with a great deal of them, but he recognized what was happening to the race by running to the pulpit. And if you listen to a lot of these black preachers, they got into the pulpit for money and money only. You know, I remember a lady who was a customer of mine at a place I used to work at. And I ran into her one day in a store. You know, and after talking for a while, you know, I asked about her family. And, you know, her and her husband had divorced because he had gotten a young lady pregnant at his church that he was now a pastor of. You know, after his life as a dope man. And we kept talking, and further along in the conversation, she told me that she thought I needed to go into the ministry because it was great money. And I told her that is not my calling, and that's definitely the wrong reason to do it. She told me of all the single ladies that would put money in my pocket, and as they patted me on the butt, my wife would have to be okay with it. I then asked her, "Why did you and your husband divorce?" And I listened so she could repeat her words to herself. She immediately ended the conversation. When the only black men in a community that our young men have to look up to are preachers, we have a serious problem. They can't look up to athletes in the community because the athletes never come back once they make it. What if we had men and women who were growing businesses? There's a difference in rich and poor people. Rich people own the system, and poor people are always looking to work in the system. We have to let the system educate us on how to win or own a system. You know, Ray Kroc of McDonald's fame was giving a speech one time, and he asked the question as to what business he was in. Someone in the audience responded, "Oh, everyone knows you're in the hamburger business." And Ray Kroc replied, "I'm not in the hamburger business. I'm in the money-making real estate business that happens to sell hamburgers on my locations." You know, we spend the greatest part of our days working in somebody else's dreams. And then we get off work. And then we go home and sit in front of the TV to watch other people working in their dreams. One last question for you. Are you working on your master plan, or will you continue to work on your master's plan?